In this section, you will learn Apache Ant, which is a very popular build automation tool based on Java. The objective of walking you through the basics of Ant build is that when we finally use it in a Jenkins CI/CD build, you must be able to fully understand what is going on under the hood. It will also help you learn and appreciate more the modern tools like Gradle that take many of the best practices from Ant. In this lecture, you will set up Ant, understand some basics of Ant scripting, and how to write a simple hello world script using Ant. Our final objective is to take a web application and build a WAR file using Ant so that it can be deployed to an HTTP server like Tomcat using Jenkins. Now, let us set up Ant first. Open your browser and Google for Apache Ant. Click on the Apache Ant download page and download the zip or the tar file. Once done, unzip the contents to any location on your computer. Now for you to be able to use Ant, you need to set up the environment variable called ant_home, just like what you did for java_home. That variable must point to the folder where you extracted the contents of the zip file. Remember, it must include only the parent folder and not the bin or the lib directory. Click on OK. Now in addition to that, you also need to create a system variable, or if it's already there, just add it to the system variable called path. And that needs to include the bin directory. Now in order to ensure that your Ant setup is working fine, open a new command window and type ant-version. This should list the version of Ant installed on your computer. If it reports an error, then please take a second look at the environment variables and ensure that it is correct. Next, let us understand some basics of Ant before we dive in and write our first build automation script. Ant stands for Another Neat Tool. It is an open source Java-based build tool provided by the Apache Software Foundation and freely distributed under the GNU license. Ant automates the entire build process in that it is not just limited to compilation of code, but rather packaging, testing, and a lot more. The most important aspect of using Ant is that it doesn't need another set of code to be written in order to build the application. Rather, it just makes use of XML elements called targets to achieve this. Having written in XML and the fact that it is based on Java makes it OS independent as well. In order to run Ant, you need a special file called the build file. It is usually called the build.xml file. This build file is composed of one or more targets that need to be invoked. Additionally, Ant has inbuilt libraries called tasks that makes it easier to write the scripts. These tasks have a set of defined functionalities to archive, compile, execute, document, deploy, or test. Ant is primarily used with Java applications, but it can be extended to other applications as well by adding extended libraries. Now that we have a brief background of Ant, let's go ahead and start creating our first Hello World build. Open a text editor. I usually use brackets for my work every day. You are free to use any editor you want. Now, every Ant file begins with a project XML tag with a name attribute. Let's create that first. Let's give it a name, Learn Ant. It also needs to have a working directory. We'll give the current directory as the base directory. Now, if you remember, I said Ant works on the concept of targets that need to be created in the build file. These are indicated by the target XML tag, with a unique name within that build file. Let's create our first target and call it echo hello world. In our first example, we just want to echo hello world to the console. We can do that using an AND task called echo. You just need to give hello world in between those tags. That's it. Now save the file, open the command window and navigate to the location where you have saved your build file. Now type in and-help. Now this would just give a list of all the options that you can give when you want to run an AND build file. We just want to give the file name. It can be given by using a -build file or a -file or a -f. We'll just use the -f option and give the build file name as build.xml. Now the build file has run, the build is successful as well, but we don't see the hello world printed on the console. Now the reason for that is we need to give the target name when we build a build file. Let's give the target name as echo hello world. Oh, the build has failed. Okay, the issue is with the L that is missed out in hello world. Let's give that and run the build file again. Run the same command. Okay, so this is run successfully and also echoed hello world onto the console. That's good. Now, you don't need to exactly specify the name of the target every time you run the AND file. You can mention that by giving a default target name in the build file itself. So type in default echo hello world as an attribute in the project root tag. Now if you just run the AND build file, it would do the same thing as earlier. It would print hello world onto the console. You don't even need to give the build file, in fact. That's because AND takes in the build file to be build.xml by default if it is in the same directory as where you're running the command. Now let us run one more simple hello world example with another AND task called exec that is used to run OS commands. Let's create a target and name it cmd hello world. Now the task name as earlier is an XML tag, and for the exec and task you need to give a parameter called executable, and in case of Windows it is cmd, and in case of Linux based operating systems it is sh or bash. Now it needs a set of parameters to run, and that is given by the arg XML element. The first XML element is arg and the value is given as /c. That tells ant not to open a command window but to run it in the same shell as ant. The second parameter is the command that we want to execute, that is echo. And the third parameter is what we want to echo, hello world. Now save the file and run it in the command. Type ant, but here you need to give the target because that's not the default target. Now the target cmd hello world has run and you see it printed on the console. That brings us to the end of this lecture. In the next lecture, you would build a real Java project, compile it and run it. So see you there. Thank you.